All right, let's jump right into this explainer. Today, we're unpacking a really fascinating political and legal contradiction. It's one of those situations that perfectly shows how history loves to repeat itself, especially inside the Philippine Senate. We're going to be looking at two different impeachment trials, separated by 14 years, and how one single senator's totally shifting stance on transparency is really catching people's attention right now.
So look at this. 14 years ago, Senator Alan Peter Cayetano fought tooth and nail for transparency. Back in 2012, he was actually willing to risk defying the Supreme Court itself just to open up the bank accounts of then Chief Justice Renato Corona. But fast forward to 2026, he's filing a formal objection to keep the bank accounts of Vice President Sara Duterte firmly shut. I mean, it is a massive reversal on the exact same legal question.
Section 1. A historical parallel.
During a caucus, presiding officer Senator Francis Chisescudero actually addressed the elephant in the room right away. He just plainly stated to his colleagues that there was a precedent involving, quote, the good gentleman himself. Honestly, Escudero directly bringing up Cayetano's past actions like that's about as close as politics ever gets to catching its own contradiction right on tape.
And here is the exact parallel we're talking about. You've got two highly powerful figures facing identical scrutiny from an impeachment court. Back in 2012, it was all about digging into Corona's dollar accounts. Today, in 2026, it's about subpoenaing the bank, tax, and anti-money laundering council records of the vice president and her husband. It's the exact same foundational issue, but we're seeing completely opposite reactions from the exact same senator judge. All right, Section 2. The financial trails surfaces.
Now, the real turning point here is this massive number, roughly 6.7 billion pesos. During the House impeachment hearings, the Bangko Sentral in Pilipinas and the Anti-Money Laundering Council, or the AMLC, actually confirmed that this staggering amount was tied to accounts linked to Vice President Duterte and Manasseh Carpio. That's a huge deal. So let's break down exactly what that 6.7 billion pesos represents. BSP Governor Eli Remolino Jr. and AMLC Executive Director Ronel Buenaventura confirmed these specific findings while under direct questioning. They flagged 33 suspicious transactions and identified 630 covered transactions. It was literally this specific bombshell testimony that sparked the whole legal and political battle we're watching unfold today. Well, the Duterte-Carpio camp definitely didn't take this lying down. They launched a rapid, multi-pronged counteroffensive. Manasseh Carpio filed criminal complaints against the BSP and AMLC officials, plus House lawmakers like Chel Diokno and Leila de Lima, claiming violations of data privacy and bank secrecy. The defense argued the 6.7 billion figure was totally fabricated, accused the panel of selective justice, and even issued warnings to journalists who were reporting on the AMLC findings, a move, by the way, that other lawyers quickly disputed as an attack on constitutional press freedoms. Moving on to Section 3, subpoenas and objections. Things really started moving fast here. We start with those explosive House hearings in April. Then, by July 20th, the Senate Impeachment Court officially grants the prosecution's motion to subpoena these records, covering the years 2007 to 2021. And by July 31st, we see real, concrete action. President Marcos authorizes the release of the tax records, and the Bureau of Internal Revenue literally delivers them to the Senate inside a now famous red box. During all of this, the defense tried to object, calling the subpoena a fishing expedition. But Senate President Escudero's ruling was completely unambiguous. He shut down their objection with some pretty powerful logic, saying it is a legal and mathematical impossibility to determine the respondent's true net worth or lawful income without examining the bank accounts of her husband. The defense also tried leaning on the Anti-Money Laundering Act, arguing that Section 8A guarantees absolute secrecy. But the court firmly rejected that argument. They clarified what the law was actually meant to do, ruling that those privacy provisions are just there to prevent unauthorized leaks by AMLC personnel. They absolutely cannot be used to shield a lawfully subpoenaed official from the constitutional power of an impeachment court trying to gather evidence. And here is where it gets incredibly ironic. The 2026 ruling that Cayetano formally opposed, it's actually way narrower and much more conservative than what he demanded back in 2012. The current subpoena explicitly leaves out foreign currency deposits. But during the Corona trial, Cayetano was fighting tooth and nail to get full access to both peso and dollar accounts at the exact same time. Okay, Section 4, the transparency contradiction. Legally speaking, there's actually a term for this kind of thing, estoppel.
It's a principle that stops a party from taking contradictory positions in the same case. Now, to be fair, it would be pretty legally sloppy to claim strict estoppel perfectly binds Cayetano's 2012 vote to a totally different trial in 2026 with a completely different respondent. But even if the strict legal doctrine doesn't perfectly apply here, the political reality is crystal clear. We're looking at a glaring inconsistency. It's the same man sitting in the same seat asking the exact same fundamental question about examining a powerful official's bank records, yet he's reaching the complete opposite conclusion based on whose records happen to be on the table. Inside the court, a specific battle broke out over the scope of these documents. Cayetano tried to narrow the subpoena, arguing that financial records from Sara Duterte's time as Davos City mayor shouldn't be included at all. But House Prosecutor Chel Diokno pushed back hard. He countered that a public official's integrity has to be evaluated from their very first day in public service, not just their current office. Diokno even dismissed the Supreme Court language Cayetano was relying on as non-binding obiter dictum. Now, it's worth noting that Cayetano wasn't completely alone in his discomfort here. Several other senators, including Pia Cayetano, Lauren Lagarda, Amy Marcos, and Camille Villar, manifested their dissent too. But there is a huge distinction. Only Alan Peter Cayetano went out of his way to ensure his stance was filed as a formal, written, continuing objection to be part of the permanent record. To which prosecutors basically reminded him, hey, you have a right to dissent, for sure, but a dissent is not a veto. Which brings us to Section 5, the principle of consistency. Think about this for a second. Back in 2016, Senator Cayetano literally campaigned holding up a cardboard sign promising total bank transparency as a matter of principle. But in 2026, when a political ally's finances are suddenly under the microscope, he files paperwork to keep the doors shut. Look, people are absolutely allowed to change their minds over time. But when a massive reversal aligns so perfectly with political alliances, the burden falls squarely on the politician to explain the underlying principle to the public, rather than just expecting us all to assume good faith. Before we wrap things up, it is absolutely vital to note that this explainer is based on reporting as of early August 2026. Vice President Sara Duterte, Manassas Carpio, and everyone named in this analysis remain entirely presumed innocent of any criminal or impeachable offenses, unless and until they are proven otherwise through proper due process. Which leaves us with one final, absolutely critical question to ponder. We've seen the documents, we've gone through the history, and we've looked at this complete reversal on transparency. So if a public official's commitment to transparency changes depending entirely on who is being investigated, can the public ever truly trust their principles? It's a question of accountability that goes way beyond just one single Senate trial. Thanks so much for joining me for this explainer, and remember to always keep asking the tough questions.